If you didn't know, Age of Imprisonment is actually my most anticipated title of 2025, and that is mostly because I am a major Zelda head over here. I love The Legend of Zelda. It is my favorite IP. My favorite game of all time is actually Tears of the Kingdom, although that doesn't mean all Zelda games like make up my top 10. I've got other IPs in there, but the point is that I love Tears of the Kingdom. I love Breath of the Wild, and yeah, I'm excited for a spin-off game from a franchise I've actually really enjoyed in Hyrule Warriors, giving me some canonical story. That alone made me really excited for this game, despite the fact there's other great games that have come out that I've enjoyed this year and more great games still to come. That said, folks, we got some new details and some brand new direct feed gameplay in 4K. That's right, we got a 4K video for you guys here because I want to show this gameplay in all of its glory in the best way that I can. Most of this gameplay comes from a random Japanese YouTube channel. We also have some coming from IGN Japan, and yes, we get some information as well from people who examine some of this footage like Commonwealth Realm and, of course, GameSpot. We will link to all the original videos down below because they deserve credit for all of this, especially when later in the video I might let you just kind of enjoy watching and listening to the sights, sounds, and all that stuff of the actual gameplay, because again, we got 20 plus minutes of gameplay for you guys. But before we dive in, I just want to remind you that, hey, we are giving away 3 copies of Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. You can enter down in the link down in the description or pin comment. And we also have a second giveaway going on for 5 copies of Kirby Air Riders. You can also go down to enter for that one as well. I got to be 18 or older. Let's go ahead and just get into the fresh, brand new details about this game because, guys, there's a lot of exciting things going on. So first off, this demo that they have out at Tokyo Game Show goes to the depths, which is something that Zelda says she's never actually seen or even known about before. She says this in the demo, so that's pretty interesting. Of course, the depths were something that, were also the first thing we ever seen because it wasn't in Breath of the Wild. Zelda is told that there are multiple sites of sacred powers in the depths, and Manure has been actually going to some of these places and gathering materials to build different types of constructs and Zonai devices. Zelda has a slash with a Zonai sword and light projectiles. Rauru uses a spear and beam attacks. Miniru uses essentially things that you could build. Think of what Link could put together in Tears of the Kingdom. And then it plays similarly as expected to other types of Musou games out there, especially Age of Calamity. But there are some unique things about this one. They added a unique R button menu that gives unique attacks per character that can counter specific moves, such as like Y doing things like dodging lunges from enemies, and X that can counter aerial or jumping attacks. Other buttons have customizable Zonai equipment that you can actually interchange. And yes, the equipment uses batteries, something we are familiar with in Tears of the Kingdom. The equipment can be used and will attack without your input, and there is no friendly fire. Enemies have the same weaknesses they did in Tears of the Kingdom, which is fascinating to me. And sync battles are where 2 characters do a powerful attack together, which changes up the strategy you're accustomed to, sending characters to different parts of the map alone, which is usually the normal strategy, but here you might want to send them in groups or pairs. Now, there doesn't seem to be any performance issues or anything like that with the game. It seems to be running at a silky smooth 60 FPS, and at the Sites of Sacred Power, Zelda and Rauru's unique skills have shorter cooldown times. We noticed this in the footage. Zelda uses the power of light granted to her by Rauru and the power of the time learned from Sonia via her unique sword. For a story element here, the souls are younger than 17 years. We're actually forbidden from going to Mount Lanayru. You know this if you paid attention to some of the lore, where the Spring of Wisdom lay, and they lacked the spring's namesake. Zelda has made plans to ascend as soon as she was of age. There's a lot of interesting connections here between the lore from Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild and this game. Again, it is canonical, and the title of the opening area of the demo is Where Wisdom Lies. Very fascinating, considering Zelda's traditionally been, the Triforce of Wisdom, and there are now crafting tables. Crafting tables are a thing in this game, and this is where you can get your various Zonai items, batteries, all of that. And look, there's going to be so much more. A lot of what you're going to see here is just going to be straight up gameplay footage. I don't want to interrupt a whole lot of it because I think it's important for you guys to get a really, really good look at this game. But before I, just cut away to the sounds of the actual game, I want to say how happy I am with what's happening with Age of Imprisonment. look, I know a lot of people are kind of done with these characters and done with this world of Hyrule. And yeah, we are going to see this world one more time, albeit what it looked like 10,000 years ago. There's actually some looks in the actual footage. If you pay really close attention, you can see like what the original Hyrule Castle looked like. And obviously all this demos in the depths where you fight like a frog and you can fight constructs and all these various enemies that we're accustomed to and used to from Tears of the Kingdom. It's not like we see anything new in this footage that is something we didn't experience in Tears of the Kingdom. That's kind of the point, because this game is a prequel, but it also is a part of Tears of the Kingdom, because there's this whole section of the game where we get various cutscenes that take us back to the past where Zelda's doing her thing that ultimately leads to what happens at the end of the game. But we don't have a lot of things that fill in the gaps. There's a lot of unexplained stuff happening. There's this entire war going on that we really don't get to see a whole lot of, and now we get to experience firsthand. Of course, we know that war to be the Imprisoning War, which got my Zelda lore head bouncing around, because look, we've had the Imprisoning War be a thing before. I think originally mentioned in Ocarina of Time, but this is not that Imprisoning War. It's a different Imprisoning War, which I find to be interesting. And obviously there's been a lot of debates on timelines and where this goes and if it's a split and all this other stuff. I don't really want to dive into that, and Nintendo's never really clarified. But I will note that I find this really interesting to see the first king and queen of Hyrule, Queen Sonia. We don't see Sonia in this footage, unfortunately. It focuses on Zelda, Rauru, and Minoru, obviously with some Hyrule soldiers walking around. I do think that it's a really interesting way to explore what happened during this time period. Again, this is during a major war event. We've never actually played a Zelda game, like a canonical Zelda game, during a major war event. And for a game called Hyrule Warriors, it makes a lot of sense that this would be the kind of game to explore such a major conflict going on. And this is apparently when we, at least according to Tears of the Kingdom, Ganondorf seems to be at the peak of his power. When we know this happens, basically after a certain event takes out a character. I guess if you haven't played Tears of the Kingdom, I don't want to spoil it too much, but once that character is taken out and that character is alive at the beginning of this game, the Ganondorf really hits the peak of his powers, combining all the powers he already had with the powers of a sacred stone. So I do think that it's going to be really fascinating to see him at the absolute peak of his power. How powerful was he, and why did the sacrifices need to be made to put an end to it until obviously the events in Tears of the Kingdom? I find it really interesting because we've never actually seen, and I kept thinking back in Zelda history, if we've ever actually seen Ganon or Ganondorf at the absolute peak of their powers. And I guess the closest you get is Ocarina of Time, where, you know, he already rules the whole land and took everything out, but we didn't see him when he was actually accessing the peak of those powers to complete such a task. We saw the aftermath, and maybe where he got a little cocky and full of himself as you slowly powered up until the point that you could obviously defeat him. I think that it's interesting that we've never actually seen him in the form where he is at his absolute best. I mean, even in Twilight Princess, we don't really get to fight him when he's at his absolute peak of power. In prior Zelda games, I guess you can argue in the Ganon pig form, maybe we've seen some of the peak of the powers, but just not so much in the 3D games. So to me, this is a really interesting aspect to explore, just because, again, can't recall a single time, at least in 3D game Zelda history, where we actually saw Ganondorf/Ganon at the pure peak of what feels like invincibility. And based on what they have to do to stop him, what we know from Tears of the Kingdom, he's at an impossible state of power that is, it's quite devastating, man. I mean, put it this way, we already know based on Tears of the Kingdom, there will be deaths in this game. Major mainline characters are going to die in this game. And unlike Age of Calamity, where they kind of circumvented the death of the champions and made a whole new story and ended up not really being canon, this one is canonical. They've been saying it every time. They're saying it at the show floor of TGS. Everything happening in this game matters for the actual lore in Zelda history. So that means, we know some key characters have to die, and they're going to. And I think those deaths and sacrifices are going to be quite tragic, because when they happened and when we found out about them in Tears of the Kingdom, as shocking as it was, we weren't super connected to those characters. The only one that we really felt that super long-term connection to was Zelda, because she carried over from Breath of the Wild, but we didn't have like a super, huge connection to other characters that ended up perishing due to the conflict. And now we get this opportunity to play as these characters, participate in these conflicts, and yes, get closer to them and actually feel some emotions when they have to make the ultimate sacrifice for the greater good. So I am very encouraged, of course, by what we are seeing. The game seems to be running fantastic. All the footage that I'm seeing out there is in 4K. I don't know if this confirms the game actually runs in 4K, but it does look really crisp. This is the best the art style has ever looked. Like, what we're seeing in this game really takes the Tears of the Kingdom and the Breath of the Wild footage, and it kind of just takes that art style to the next level. It's unfortunate that we, even with the upgrades like 1440p with Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, that we're never going to see Nintendo themselves hit the peak with this art style the way Age of Imprisonment is. But that's okay, because you know what? It's, a lot of people are kind of tired. Maybe not of the art style. I don't know if the art style has been a major complaint, but at least of the world that we're dealing with here. I don't think this is going to affect the sales of Age of Imprisonment, because I think Age of Imprisonment, especially being canonical, its main appeal is to people who truly care for a final send-off to Princess Zelda and the characters of this world that we've been participating in for over a decade, or almost a decade at this point as of 2027. So I think that, this can bring a nice capper to everything and really set the stage for whatever's next for Zelda. Obviously, we know they're working on a brand new 3D Zelda game. They already confirmed that all the way back in 2023 when Fujiwara said he already had ideas rolling in his head that he haven't even told Aonuma about for the next one. And obviously, we know they're going to probably get away from this one because they usually don't go more than 2 games deep. We saw like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. We saw Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. They usually don't go more than 2 games deep. So, and I get Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks is actually part of a trilogy that went back to Wind Waker. I get it, but it's just Nintendo usually doesn't do that. So I kind of feel like this next Zelda game is going to be a new, fresh take, either a brand new Hyrule or a brand new land, brand new characters besides obviously the core of, Zelda and Link. I mean, I don't know if we're going to get Ganon again or if it's going to be a different enemy, but I'm very much looking forward to wherever they go next. And obviously, I'm happy for the continuation of this. So for the rest of this video, I'm going to kind of sign out here and just let you guys enjoy the actual like audio and stuff of the game, most of it and all of it in Japanese. I want to also note here that a huge thank you to the outlets that were able to get direct feed capture and the other content creators, because getting direct feed capture is really the best way we could show this game to you. And I wanted to put it all here. I think after you're done with this video, you won't really have much else that you're curious about. But if you are, again, we have links to all of the sources on all this stuff down in the description. Now, I have to go get to work on a news video that there's so much other news coming out of Tokyo Game Show we got to get to. But this is the one I wanted to make sure got its own video, because, man, this is my most anticipated game. And you guys know when it comes to Zelda, I go all out with the coverage. So this is like step 1. Now we have to wait and see what more information we learn in interviews and other things about this game. Thank you guys for tuning in, and enjoy the footage.
Zelda.これで終わりです。行きます。手加減しません。失せなさい。どうにか倒せましたね。
はっせや
行きます。
覚悟
手加減しません。ここからです。